You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast, your local source for upcoming events, hot new listings, and bite-sized interviews with business and community leaders. Here's your host, Brent Jones.
Hello and welcome. You are listening to Season 5, Episode 5 of the Fort Erie Podcast. It is Tuesday, March 15th, 2022, and I'm your host, Brent Jones. This is the second to last episode of the season. This, of course, being the farewell season. The Fort Erie Podcast will be going on a bit of a hiatus, but today my guest will be MaryLou AmbroseLittle. You may recall she was previously a guest on the Fort Erie Podcast, and today she's going to be talking about her involvement in the economic development of downtown Stevensville. Lots going on this week, though. Of course, it's March break, so I imagine a lot of parents are tearing their hair out right now, and we've got St. Patty's Day going on this Thursday, and I've got some community events to share with you at the end of today's episode to hopefully get you active for both of those things, March break and St. Patty's Day. But let's start first by diving into some local news headlines. So there are going to be improvements made to Dominion Road between Lakeshore Road and Beachview Avenue. It's going to mean some traffic disruptions and delays for drivers, but the region's paying for it, which is a bit of good news. It's a $6.4 million project scheduled to commence on April 4th, and the work is being done to improve intersections, road surface conditions, and drainage. Work will include improvements to lighting, sight lines, and the installation of sidewalks and bicycle lanes. A roundabout will also be constructed at the intersection of Dominion and Lakeshore Roads near Old Fort Erie. As always, you can find links in the show notes below today's episode to get more information about this story and anything else that we talk about today. The other story that I wanted to mention is a bit of a feel-good story. Fort Erie's Ashley Blake finds peace through an ancient practice, says the headline. Basically, this is announcing the opening of a unique yoga studio in Stevensville, which is drawing a lot of attention. As the story goes, outlining Ashley's path to opening up this yoga studio, she was looking for a change after a lifetime of work in the service industry. She'd grown tired of the nonstop exposure to alcohol and social drinking, and freely admits that she was an alcoholic for 20 years. But nearly a decade ago, she discovered yoga, became hooked, and wanted to pay it forward. So Yoga Dome is the name of the yoga studio. And again, you can find more information in the show notes below today's episode. For this week's hot new listing, I wanted to highlight, this is something I haven't actually done before. I want to highlight a listing that's coming up here in 2 days. And I know it's coming up in 2 days because it's my listing, Brent Jones with Remax Niagara Realty. This Thursday, check out 25 Lillian Place, which will be hitting the market. It's a bit of a handyman special, but coming up this Thursday with a bit of TLC and elbow grease. It's a 3-bedroom property, which really has the potential to be a great starter home, vacation property, or income opportunity. For those of you who may not realize, Lillian Place is just steps from Lake Erie, from Waverly Beach. It features several very recent updates, some new windows on the way. We're going to be listing at 425, and you can call or text to get in touch with me directly to get more information or to book a private viewing. My number is 905-626-8826, 905-626-8826. And now we'll look at what's on your minds here, Fort Erie. Let's dive into the Fort Erie Questions and Answers Facebook group. So to start, Jill asks, where can I find the best Indian food in town? So there were a couple of pretty popular answers, and I'm sorry if I say this one wrong, but there's Tabac Niagara, which was formerly Denny's. So the site of the old Denny's, and also the Lighthouse on Niagara Parkway. Both had quite a few mentions in the comments below this question. And Mark asks, where can I find corned beef in Fort Erie? And the two most common responses, not a huge surprise, first being Your Farm Gate here in Ridgeway. And you may recall that Sean Murphy was my guest last season on the Fort Erie podcast. The other popular response was Tender Cuts in Fort Erie. And now on to my chat with MaryLou AmbroseLittle. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show, and welcome back, MaryLou. Thank you for returning to the Fort Erie podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Well, I'm happy to talk with you again. It's hard to believe it's been a couple years. It's almost like there's been a lot going on for these last couple of years, eh?
It really has. I think people think everything stopped just because we're in this COVID thing, but there's lots going on behind the scenes.
Oh, I bet. And the last time we spoke, I know we talked quite a bit about your involvement with the Ridgeway Farmers Market. Is that still the case? Are you still involved with the farmers market there, or what's going on? What are you doing in Ridgeway these days?
Well, what happened with the Ridgeway Farmers Market is before COVID, a friend of mine and I were going to go out west. So it was time to kind of make a decision about the Ridgeway market. And I put in a number of years, and it was time to kind of pass the mantle on. So I had officially resigned. So then, as it turned out, I had started working on some projects in Stevensville and actually was running the Stevensville market along with other volunteers from the Conservation Club in Stevensville. So I just started moving things forward there.
Well, as I understand it, you're involved with, is it the summer concert series at the Legion in Ridgeway, something along those lines?
Yeah, I've still been involved with the Legion over the years, mainly helping with a short farmers market, or I should say a community market in the fall. And then in the summertime, I help out with Summer Breezes. And also we tie into the downtown summer festival weekend with a concert it's usually Sunday evening of that weekend. So we're just trying to confirm that as we speak.
That's got to be tricky, I would think, trying to sort out a summer concert series with things still very much being up in the air regarding restrictions right now and what may or may not be possible in the summer months.
Well, I think you have to go ahead and be positive about all this, and also set up your tentative schedule. You can always change it if things are not working out, you can do it. But I'm quite confident that outdoor events will happen this year. We'll just have to do the social distancing that's required for the entertainers and for the audiences. And people are so used to that now, they just automatically do it.
We actually, even though we talked largely about the Ridgeway Farmers Market last time you were on the podcast, we met at Scuttlebutt, indoor dining, but no masks, if you can believe it, at the Scuttlebutt. Spoke fondly, I remember, about the Sinister Minister, I think is your favorite beer from Brimstone Brewing as well, if I remember that part correctly. But now that you're more involved, let's say in the, with businesses in Stevensville, I think you mentioned to me before we got started about kind of the eventual goal of setting up a BIA for Stevensville, about something along those lines. Can you talk to listeners a little bit about that?
Sure, I can. We've actually already started doing that over the last 2 years. There's a monthly meeting with anybody who would like to attend. It tends to be a core of about 10 local businesses that get involved. And some of the projects that we've taken on are developing a business directory specifically for the Stevensville area and updating that. We've launched Downtown Stevensville as a Facebook business page. So anybody can go there and take a look at what's going on in Stevensville. We also are planning on having some meetings with more of the businesses and the community to discuss the feasibility of moving toward a more formal group. Now, I mentioned the BIA, but there is the other option of just working toward being a not-for-profit. But I think the point is, we've been talking a lot. We need to make a decision as a community which direction we'd like to take with this.
Like how do you think some of the markets, some of the in-person events, how are some of those things going to be driving factors in the economic recovery of the town of Fort Erie as a whole?
Well, I think they're the kind of things that people look to do on weekends and when they have some time. So if we can attract people to the area that have not stopped in Stevensville, that would be great. There's a tendency for people to just kind of, even our residents will kind of fly by because they're going somewhere else to do their shopping. Or if they're people coming in as weekend guests, they tend to fly by to Ridgeway and to Crystal Beach. So I think part of our goal is to get more people to stop and see what's there. Now that sometimes happens when there's the train track stops people very nicely and the traffic backs up all the way to West and Stevensville Road. And then they take a look around and go, oh, I didn't know there was a farmer's market here. And we've had several people say that. Or most people will know that Safari Niagara and the other associated businesses on that site are there. So they come that far, they stop, but they either go home, so they go north again, or they go south and head to Crystal Beach. So right. That's one of the things we've noticed. It's finding ways of getting people to slow down and stop and see what opportunities there are in Stevensville. And there are more businesses than people realize.
Now, are there any events, just to kind of wrap things up, are there any events coming up in Stevensville this year, Stevensville, that you're involved in that you'd like to talk about or that you'd like to promote, maybe coming up this summer?
Well, for sure, I know the farmers market is starting, and I think it's safe to say what the date is because it's out quite a bit from when we're doing this broadcast. We actually start on Wednesday, June the 1st. And
That's
we'll
quite
run
a bit.
and we'll run right till Thanksgiving. Depending on what happens with things, there also is talk of doing an indoor Christmas market after the main market closes down. So I'll keep you posted on that. I have not heard for sure from our kin club whether they will be doing their Spring Fest, but keep that in mind as something that could be happening this year. So if anyone has some events that they know are going on in the next little while, let us know, because we will include that in the e-blast that goes out to all the residents that have joined the list.
Perfect.
So that's all good. And I think there's been some nice opportunities too during the being closed down or locked down for people to take a look at their own communities and see what things they can do. I know a lot more people are visiting historic sites, taking a look at what things are here. A lot of people who are not familiar with this are surprised that J.L. Craft actually was born here in Stevensville, of all places, on Bowen Road, and the farmhouse is still there, and the Ontario Historic Plaque is there. I've put that up on the Facebook page a couple times and always get a big response to that because people didn't know that.
Right.
And there are things, as I said, that will be going on at the Conservation Club. There may be some outdoor yoga classes. So people are planning. They haven't given up. They're just waiting for the okay to move forward.
Well, I love your optimism, MaryLou. I want to thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Hey, you're welcome. Anytime.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're going to wrap up today's episode by reviewing some upcoming community events. And this first one may help quite a bit with some of the March break boredom, let's say. If you're looking for something to do with the family, the town of Fort Erie has released a 2022 March break public skating schedule with times for public skating at either free or very low cost per person skating options at either the Leisureplex in Fort Erie, or the Crystal Ridge Arena. You can find a link to that complete schedule in the show notes below today's episode. Something else that could be a lot of fun to do, tying in both March break and St. Patrick's Day, coming up on Thursday, March the 17th, is the St. Patrick's Day drop-in play at Little Bridgeburg. This is the sort of gym activity center set up at Regional Limousine on Jarvis Street. Something very cool coming up on Saturday, March 19th, is a clothing drive for Ukraine, specifically looking for blankets and children's clothing, children's winter clothing, personal hygiene products, over-the-counter medications, flashlights, sleeping bags, tents. There's an address in Crystal Beach where those items are going to be collected this Saturday from 2 until 4 p.m. The Niagara Outdoor Show is coming to the Crystal Ridge Community Center. Also, this happening this Saturday, March 19th from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. You can get more details about that. And this one, we're a little ways out, but I thought I would mention anyway. Garrison Place is announcing that they will be doing their part to help raise relief funds for Ukraine by hosting a fundraising bingo event March 23rd at 2 p.m., complete with a 50-50 draw, raffle baskets, and more. So next week, folks, you can join me for the season finale and really for the time being, the series finale of the Fort Erie podcast. Joining me next week will be my first guest ever. Season 1, Episode 1, Stephen Passero joined me. He will be joining me again next week to kind of wrap things up and talk about his new role with Fort Erie Festivals. So long for now, everybody. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones, a sales representative with RE/MAX Niagara Realty Limited Brokerage. Follow @BuyWithBrent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast on popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and catch a new bite-sized episode every week. Until next time.